Well, want to get the interview started?
Sure.
Okay, first question. What was your introduction to motorsports?
My dad is John Force, so he's been racing in the NHRA drag racing series since the 70s. So I was born in the 80s. So since I was born, I've been at drag strips. And back then, he has like a booming business now with with multiple teams, but back then it was him and his buddies and cousins, and my mom would help on the car. It was like a super laid back family kind of event. So there's like a lot of photos and videos of, me being little at the racetrack in the tow van, or, over by the parts tray, and kind of neat stuff that we happen to have recorded that now is kind of special for us. But so I grew up around it, my sisters and I did. And then as we got older, you get into school. I wasn't able to go to as many of the races because we had our school responsibilities, we had sports and things that we were involved in. But we always during the summers would kind of hit the road and travel all around the country with my dad. And then as I got older in high school, I just really, I don't know if it was so much, I was never like a grease monkey. I don't have some big love or skill set for like the mechanics of everything. It was more just the whole lifestyle in the world of drag racing. All my friends were out there. I loved traveling. I loved being at the track. And since I grew up around it, it was like a second home for me. So as I got older and was starting to kind of think about where did I want to go in life and what career did I want, it was really kind of an obvious thing for me. Like, well, I want to somehow be involved in drag racing because that's where I want to be when I have a weekend off. So why wouldn't I try to get a job in it? And so that's kind of how I got into motorsports, was just honestly 100% through my dad. And I think about that often. Like, I wonder if I didn't have a dad that drag raced, would I have ever ended up at a drag race? Would I like watching motorsports? I mean, you never know. But when you're like immersed in something like that from a young age, I feel like you either love it or you totally hate it and you never want to be at a track again. And for my sisters and I, we all really, really loved it. And still to this day, all of us are involved somehow or another in motorsports.
That's good. Is that your car in the background?
That's my dad's funny car that my husband is the tuner on. So he had to do a podcast a week ago. My husband did, and he's never done one before. So he was just gonna like do it in our son's room from home because it was like late at night when he had to do it. And I'm like, no, you gotta have something cool in the background. So we grabbed this from our shop, our race shops just down the street, and put it up I'm actually in my son's room right now, because now that they're out for summer, it's a little trickier to like go down to the office. So my little one's asleep still down the hall. But this is my son's room. So we stuck the painting up. We're like, you know what? Until they need it at the shop, we're just going to borrow it for Zooms and different things that we need it for when we're working from home. So that's my dad's funny car. That's the type of car I used to race when I raced. They go about 330 miles an hour. They're 12,000 horsepower. So they're fast, and when they explode big, and they're really exciting to watch. They're extremely loud. You have to have ear protection or you'll just destroy your hearing. And so I that was one of the categories I raced when I was in early and mid 20s, before I had my kids. So I think my last race in the funny car was end of 2010. Then I got pregnant with my son that off season, and now I have two boys that are 10 and no, almost 10 and 8. And but I did get back in a couple of years later when my youngest one was about 1, because I have a picture of him and he's like holding onto my like I have my helmet on about to get in the car, because I wanted to relicense and I wanted my boys to see me run. So I think that was probably in like maybe 2014 or 2015, somewhere around there. So that's the last time I was in one of the funny cars. So since then, since I jumped out of the car and took like a different position in the company, I started our like entertainment side of our company. So I do all of our video production, which I really like. And a lot of fans, I mean, every day on my social, I get questions about me driving again, because I drove for a total of 9 years. So a lot of fans assumed I would come back after I had kids, but I really also like the creative side of it. I mean, the racing and the traveling is fun, but sometimes when you've done that for a decade, it's not as glamorous and exciting as it may seem. And I've always been a creative person, so I feel like it's just something I really enjoy. So not to say I would never get in the car again, but at this point I'm like, you know what, I could be home with my kids and let them do football and church and all the things we want to do, but I can also create all of our videos and be a part of our racing team without like having to give up one or the other. So for now it's working.
Has anyone recognized you on the streets? In
If not here in our town, I literally grew up in this house. My husband and I bought this house from my parents, so I've lived in this town nearly my entire life. And there's a lot of people that know we're a racing family, but it's not like we all just know each other. So that doesn't normally happen. If I travel, especially to the Midwest, then sometimes I'll get recognized. There's a huge fan base out there of like race loving people. So especially obviously if we're in a town that a race is there in town, like if we go to Topeka, Kansas and the races are in town, if we go into like a restaurant or something, sometimes if there's race fans around, I'll get recognized. But a lot of the time I'm also with my family, so they'll definitely get recognized, my dad or my sister Brittany, because they're still competitive right now and on TV a lot and everything. So it's funny and it's strange. That's probably was the biggest struggle I had in my career. I'm not a super I'm kind of a shy person. And so that was probably the hardest part for me, was like learning the celebrity side of it. And it just might, like my dad, he is like a ham. He loves the spotlight. He loves attention on him. He loves drama. If he gets into it with another driver, like that's all awesome to him. And that makes for good TV. And I 100% get it. But I'm not that personality. So I had to like do special training. I did some special training to try to help me to overcome, because it's kind of like it can be a fear. It was a weird fear because they're just fans that love you and want to come and grab on you and cheer for you. But when you're a shy person like me, that was like that was way scarier than the 300-mile-an-hour race car I was going to get in.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know what it's like to be famous, so I wouldn't know.
It's so weird now to see, like, because when I raced, social media was kind of just getting started, and now it's like a whole world, and it's how the world is now. Like, it's never going to go back. Like, this is the new way, and it's just crazy to me. Like, my boys, they just find these YouTube stars that they love. There's some kid, I can't even remember his name. He's probably in his 20s, and him and his buddies make these funny videos, and my kids, like, he is their famous person. He's like, in my generation, like if we saw Brad Pitt on the street, that'd be like the most famous person in the world to see. My kids, it's like this kid from YouTube. I'm like, this is so insane, but that's how they watch their TV now. So like a star on YouTube is just as big as a star on NBC on the TV channel. So it's kind of funny. It's a little bit scary when you have kids, because then now my kids, like, they want to start a YouTube channel and they want to do this. And I'm like, okay, we can do videos that we put on our racing. Like my boys are in a lot of our videos because they race too. So they're in a lot of videos I make for our company. But I'm like, you got some weirdos out there. You got people that are good and people that are not good. And to like open that can of worms, yeah, that's a scary kind of unknown thing when you're a parent. So for now, I'm like, you guys can be like kind of safely tucked into our videos where we keep an eye on the comments, and but as far as them like launching their own YouTube series, I'm like, no. Even though I like to edit and I love filming them, that's a lot of stress.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I totally get it, because I love Britney Spears, and like everyone my age, they're like, oh yeah, Britney's cool, but I like this YouTuber better, or I love like this streamer better. And I'm like, are singers like outdated now? Like,
Yeah, it's so crazy. Britney Spears was like, in my years of growing up, like I think she's the same age as me. She might be like 1 year older or 1 year younger than me. Like the most famous in our age group.
yeah.
And like was on the stage doing shows. I mean, like all the live events and everything like that. and then it was just crazy to see her whole like everything she went through, and like the little taste that I got of that celebrity world. I'm like, I can 100% see how people go crazy, because it's like I couldn't even imagine, like, we would go into a little town where a race was at, it's like expected, and fans are going to come up to you, but then it's like you leave that weekend, you leave that town, and you go back to your life, and you kind of get a break from it, to like wake up every day in your own town and not be able to like go out to your mailbox seems insane to me. I know a lot of young kids, they think, or people in general think that would be like the best thing in the world to happen, but I'm like, it's great, but if you really think about day in and day out that that's your life, like think about that. It's something, you give up a lot to have that. So
Yeah, you see that new documentary with her on
I
Fox?
haven't seen it yet. I'm like, I don't know if I want to or not. I don't even know if she approved it or not. So I feel bad to watch something if it's not something she wants shared about her. I'm
I,
really curious about it, but then I haven't watched it yet. And I think it's because I feel like I've heard that she's not really she wasn't like part of making it or anything. I don't know.
yeah. No, I don't. She's in the conservatorship still, so I don't think she has a say. Because you know about the whole Free Britney movement and all that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
100% on that. I have all of her cassettes, all of her hit clips, all of her CDs, all of her vinyls. Like, I'm obsessed with her.
Wow.
So I'm a really big fan of her. But this is not about Britney.
She's cool though. I got to go to one of her shows once in Vegas. My sisters and I went, and it was awesome. I mean, it was like a show, like what you would expect to see, dancing and singing and the whole thing. I don't know what year that was. It wasn't that long ago. It was because I had both my kids, so it would have been within the last 5 years, I would say. I don't know. It's fun. I'll get your number and I'll text you. I had a couple pictures, I think, from it, from the seats or whatever, but
Please get me the autograph from you and give me the Britney pictures. You're the best. But back to the topics. I don't want Sean to get mad at me. Who were among your inspirations and mentors in the sport?
my dad was definitely always an inspiration for me. Not so much the driving, but more just how he did his thing. He is great with the fans. They're his number one. He just gets it. It's like racing is a sport, it's a competitive sport, but just as important is the fans and the media, because if the media is not covering it and if the media isn't covering it and the fans aren't following you, then the sponsors are not going to come. And if you don't have the sponsors, there's no way you can run a car, no matter how much you want it, because they're expensive to run. So he got it from like a really young, he just naturally understood that. And back in like the 70s and 80s when he started, he had no money, but he did the whole show. He had the personality. He would grab the fans and grab a little kid and throw him in the car to take pictures. Like he knew how to work that and like put on a show, and the fans loved that. And so they would come to his pit to see what crazy thing is he going to say or do. And it was entertaining for them. And that's how the sponsors eventually came to him. And so that was really interesting for me to see that side of it. Like a lot of people, and me included, I remember when I drove, I used to get very, well, this is a business and this is a sport and we're here to win. And I would get real serious about that. Like, I need to be in here practicing on my tree. I can't be out there doing interviews or doing this. Like, this is more important. I'm here to win. And it took me a lot of years, and really it took me stepping out of it and going to the entertainment side to see the other side of it. Like, yes, the competition is important, but again, it's like that whole cycle of the sponsors, the fans, like you can be the most, if you're only in there practicing your craft or whatever, and you're not out there doing the other parts of it, like those parts are just as important. And I know a lot of competitive athletes in any sport, some get that and some don't. And my dad always got that and really taught us that. So that was important for me. And then as far as I'm trying to think of other people, I know a lot of interviews I've done over the years, they really want me to like have all these names of females that race that were huge, like that I really tried to follow in their footsteps. But since I was involved in it already since I was little. It was odd and end people that I really looked up to. It wasn't where maybe if I can't come into it completely outside of racing and like came new to the sport, I would have looked at it differently. But it was more like the people that were family friends of ours. Those were the people I wanted, like competitors of my dad that were family friends. Those were the ones I would cheer for. Those were the ones I would root for. There were a few females that I became good friends with that I would look up to. But I would say it was more the people that I was grew up and was raised around. They were kind of like that was the group that I would look up to. I don't know if that makes sense. It sounds kind of weird. Um, I think a lot of people expected like women in other motorsports, they might be like I had posters on the walls of them and all that kind of thing. And it wasn't like that. The female thing wasn't like such a big deal in our sport. Especially because I'd been around it from a young age. Like I wasn't this new random like girl coming into the scene. Like this was the little girl that everybody knew growing up at the track. I wasn't like a new person when I got into the driver's seat, which was nice for me. I think there would have been a lot of pressure if it had been a different way. And there are women in our sport that had to deal with that. And I do not I feel bad for them. I wouldn't want to have to go through some of the things that they went through. I'm saying like years before I raced, you know, where men didn't want him there and like that whole thing. Like when I came along, I didn't get that feeling. And part of it was probably because of my dad. My competitors knew my dad and they were accepting and happy to have me be a part of it. And so I felt very like supported, I guess. I came at like a nice time where I didn't have all that negativity that I think a lot of women in motorsports that came before me had to deal with. So, and then as far as outside of the driver's seat, for mentors, there's a gal that works for us. Her name's Kelly Antonelli. She's worked for us. She worked for one of our sponsors years and years and years ago, and then came to our team from there. And I've always looked up to her because she, first of all, she kind of like oversees and runs and handles everything. She's very organized. She's very calm. She's not like like my dad's very emotional up and down and you never know what you're getting that day with him. And she's the complete opposite. And so I always looked up to her like that's the kind of like businesswoman I want to be. I want to be like people can count on me. If I say I'm going to do something, I follow through and I do it. Like she's just on it. And that's just her personality. She's been like that her whole life. She's the one that like has a sewing kit and a band-aid in her bag if somebody happened to need it. Like she's just like kind of takes care of everybody and oversees everything. And it's just always been really impressive to me. So there's like often a time where I'm like, what would Kelly do in this situation? How would Kelly handle this? Like if your flights got canceled or you missed your flight or whatever, it's like, well, first of all, that wouldn't happen to her. But second, okay, she would take a breath and she would look at the situation and then she would just handle it. She wouldn't like start crying in the airport like I've done over the years because I get overwhelmed and I don't know how to handle something. So it's good to have those kind of people to look to be like, okay, I wish I was more like that. I'm not, but I could still try in situations to be like that, even if I'm not naturally that type of a person. So I'm very lucky to have, and ironically, her husband used to be my crew chief. So when I raced, he was the one that ran my car. So I especially got to work with her because she would, you know, kind of she oversaw all of our teams because we had 4 teams then. But so yeah.
Cool. I meant to ask too. I don't know if it's one of these questions that Sean gave me, but I meant to ask. You travel a lot, right?
I traveled a lot more when I raced. I traveled basically January through November, at least 2 weekends a month. We would travel on a Thursday, fly home on a Monday, or sometimes Tuesday if we had to test Monday. Now that I do our video production, and since I have my kids, I don't travel as much. I kind of can pick and choose, and depending if a sponsor needs something filmed, then I'll pick that race to go out to film. It's worked well in the last year that our PR gal, Sarah, she'll film a bunch because she goes to all the races. So she'll film a bunch, send the footage back to me Saturday night and Sunday night, and I'm at home editing a video that we try to put out Monday or Tuesday. So we kind of have a nice little routine for that kind of a thing. But a lot of the things we need to do, like we just put out yesterday a Father's Day video of my dad and Brittany. And it was just like we sat him down. I actually had posted a few weeks ago to fans like, I'm gonna do a video of my dad and Brittany. Send me questions you want me to ask, and they put it in the comments. So we kind of asked those questions and let them kind of have fun together, and just it was laid back. We did it at my dad's house on a couch instead of like in front of a race car like we normally do. And so that was filmed at home on a weekday. My kids were at school when I filmed it, and then I was able to kind of edit it over the week and get it out. So a lot of our things are not like where I have to travel. We can film a lot of the things here. But it's always fun to travel to get that footage of the crew working, the drivers suiting up, getting their gear on. I mean, all that stuff's super important for a lot of the videos we do. So I'll be leaving this Thursday to travel to Ohio to go to a race to film. And there's also a cool water park at the hotel. So my kids are very excited. We try to go to that one. So we'll definitely go to more in the summer. I could go to more. My dad, I'm very lucky that my dad, he kind of lets me work my schedule because my husband travels all the time with the team. So he'll be leaving Wednesday night on a red eye. And I mean, he's gone a lot. So my dad really works with me because he knows I have the kids and stuff. So he's like, as long as you're getting your work done, we'll make it work, and we'll work together. And I mean, I traveled so much back in the day. I feel like I don't have as big of a desire to go on the road. And I know that seems weird because traveling, especially right now, everyone's like ready to travel. I am a little bit now after COVID, after the time of being at home. I'm like, okay, I could use some travel, but I don't know. It's like when you did that for so long, or at least for me, I was kind of ready for like the typical boring life, which you know what I mean? Like I did it for so many years, like right out of high school. I was in college when I started racing super comp. So I didn't do any of the college activities. I wasn't involved at all. I didn't even walk at graduation. I was at a race. I was very much like I'm racing and I don't care about these other things. And now I kind of regret that. I think I should have at least a little bit done the college experience. Because racing will always be here. But at the time, that's just what I was interested in. And I wasn't like, I literally went to one party in all my college years. And now I look back, I'm like, that was supposed to be your time to like, I could have gotten involved. But when you're racing, you really can't, you can't do both when you're like trying to move up the ranks. And so now I look back and I think I did that travel at that time, and I did a lot of it, and I loved it when I did it. Like I don't regret that at all. But then there was so many times like I never had Saturday morning. Like even to this day, this seems so weird because I've been out of the seat for 10 years now almost. But I'll still wake up on a Saturday morning and be like, "Oh my gosh, I have a Saturday." Like cuz when I raced, you were at a racetrack at 7 a.m. on a Saturday racing. Your Saturdays were like Tuesdays. Well, on Tuesdays, all your friends are at work. So your Saturdays. Now, the positive is when you would go to do things, there was never a crowd or a line because my weekends were not off time for other people. So if I like went to Knott's Berry Farm, I went at like on a Tuesday when nobody else went. Where now I'm starting to see like, oh, now I get it. Like you try to go to a restaurant on a Saturday night, it's packed. You go, maybe not right now with how COVID, but in today's days, where like 10 years ago I would go out to dinner with my friends on a Wednesday night and it was like you could get right in and you didn't have to make a reservation. So there's like pros and cons, but I'm like I still value the weekends because I just never had them for so many years. And so when my husband's like, he wanted me to go to the Indy 500 because my brother-in-law was racing in it, and he's like, come on, the kids haven't missed any school, so we could take them out for a few days. And I thought about it and we looked into tickets, and then it was like, oh, but I could like drink coffee and watch the Indy 500 from like the couch in my sweats. Like, why would I travel for days and pack up the kids? And my husband's like, you're just a dork. Like, what happened to the travel loving lady I dated? But it's like, I did that. So I know that seems weird, but when you don't get that like boring weekend time, you do appreciate it for sure. And just getting to do like normal things with my kids, like, oh, let's just go to the park and ride bikes around, like just really crazy things. But when you don't get to do that, you do miss out on it. Even if it seems like a boring thing, it's still a special thing.
Have you traveled to Japan at all, or is that something
Oh,
you want to go?
oh, yes, that's one thing when I talk traveling, I'm thinking like around the US to like random little towns. Now, when we're talking like we're going to travel to England, okay, I will pack my stuff up and I'm ready to go. Like
Yeah.
there is like a whole bucket list of places that I would love to go to. I would love to go to Thailand.
Oh,
I would love to go to Egypt someday. Like in my lifetime, there's just certain places you just want to see, you know. We don't race out of like our series, the NHRA series is only in the US. There are tracks in other countries, but our series is only in the US. So, I mean, when I was younger, we would go to Canada a lot and do kind of special fun races up there. And we've been, I know my dad, when he started his career in the 70s, he actually raced in Australia, which
ooh.
that's another thing on my list. I'm like, Dad, we should go back to Australia. Like if you retire from the circuit and you have the time, I don't know how we get the cars over there, but we need to do that and go back there and race since that's where it all began for him. I would really love to do that. I would totally get in a car with him if we had a chance like to race each other out in Australia. That'd be awesome. Um, but no, I mean, we've traveled around Europe. My mom, a couple different times throughout my life, she's taken us on trips to Europe that are just, now I feel like as I'm older, I appreciate it more. When I was like, I think I graduated from high school, my mom took me. We went to Germany. We went to like a handful of different places. But at that age, I feel like I just, you're just out of high school. All I wanted to do was hang out with my friends. And now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we went to some really cool places. And we went back later when my husband and I were engaged. I think it might have been the year we got married. So maybe it was like in 2008, before we had kids. We went on a family trip to Europe again, and we took my dad, which was, he didn't want to go because he's like, he loves to travel to the races, but he doesn't like to go on vacations and stuff. So we like basically, my mom's like, you're going with your family to Europe. We're doing this trip, and it was amazing. Like we went to Rome, and we did the Amalfi Coast, and it was just like a once in a lifetime experience that I have with my family. Now I look back, and I feel like because I was a little bit older, I totally got into I wanted to know the history of everything. Like, so now my husband and I talk about with our boys, because we're kind of getting antsy, like we do want to travel again, plan some type of trip like that. But we're like, do we wait till they're a little bit older? Like we want them to really enjoy it too, and not just only care about the hotel pools, which will be the important part of the trip for them. So maybe we'll wait a few more years. We'll see.
Please go to Japan. That's my dream country. I always wanted to go.
Yeah.
I'm trying to become an English teacher there because I know they're in high
Wow.
demand. Yeah, I'm
Oh my
training
God.
to be one. So please go to Japan for me. Tell me how it is.
That is amazing. That's so neat that you are trained. That's like the path. What year are you in school?
I'm in I believe now my third year, my AA. So
So,
after I
so now you'll be picking your specialty or whatever. Because I know the first couple of years is like your basic things you have to do, all the different, math and everything.
well, the good
Wow.
news is in my college, I'm in the Quanta Honors program at Daytona State. So if I get chosen to go to Stetson, I get a free ride to Stetson if I get chosen. I'm
Wow.
praying that happens so I can study abroad in Japan through Stetson, so I can get a feel for the country. And then I want to do the JET program. It's like a program that gets English teachers like me ready for Japan and like prepares me and stuff and gets me situated there. So that's my end all.
That is amazing. That's really impressive that you know what you want to do, and it's such like big goals. You're not like, I want to get a job at Starbucks. I think that's what my goal was when I was probably around your age. I want to race and I want to work at Starbucks. So good for you to look at. I feel like you got to look at that big picture and be like, it's hard sometimes, especially when you're just out of like high school and you're in college and your day to day is so like your work, so much schoolwork. I remember how much college, it was like a lot. Like you were just, I felt like I was just studying all the time. but it's like you got to think you're working towards something. Like there's an end goal to all of this. So that's really neat that you kind of already know which way you want to go, because that's half the battle. I feel like a lot of my friends in college, they kept changing their minds on their what major they wanted. And they'd take a bunch of classes in one, and then they changed their mind, and some of those just kind of went to waste. And then they'd start over here, and they kind of just jumped all over the place, and it took them a lot longer. And a lot of people, their degrees, this would be different for you because if you're going into teaching, but like for a lot of people, they don't even end up in what their degree was. So it was more like take classes that are interesting, that you enjoy. Like when I went into college, I'm going to sound like the typical Californian. My degree, I have a degree in radio, TV, film. That is my degree. I know that sounds
California.
kind of embarrassing, but at the time I knew I wanted to race. That's what I was doing. So there was no required degree for that. I could have.
What do you recall about your first professional drag race? This should be interesting.
Um, well, I'll talk about my first professional funny car, my first professional funny car race, because I did a lot of small races in other categories, but um to be honest, off the top of my head, I don't remember the very first one. But in funny car, I 100% remember that. And that was in Pomona, California, which is our home track. It's like 30 minutes from where I live. And it's the very first race of the season. Our season always starts in Pomona at the Winter Nationals and ends at Pomona at the World Finals. So those races are always so exciting and kind of big time because everybody's, since it's the beginning and end of the year, it's like it's just always has a lot of special excitement around it. And we were actually filming a reality show at the time for A&E. We were on a reality show called Driving Force about our family, and so they had started filming the year prior. So like the first season was me training to move up professionally in a funny car to race against my dad. So um I don't know if it was part of season one or where it was in the show season, but the whole camera crew was there to capture the very first race in February. And so that was kind of exciting and a little stressful, but obviously the fans were all like really interested in that because now they've been watching the show, and then they see the camera crews there and they can even be on TV. Like, so there was just a whole other level to it than maybe a normal first race. And I just remember pulling up, like they tow my race car around the corner, and suddenly you're like on the starting line and you see the giant grandstands on either side and they're packed with people. And I just remember, and then there's so many people on the starting line, the camera crew, like we were on ESPN at the time. So the ESPN camera crews, our reality show camera crews, photographers. I mean, there's a lot of stuff looking at you. And I just remember being like, okay, I got to put all that out of my mind. I can't like think about that because on a testing day there wouldn't be, and when I practiced and trained there wasn't all of that. So thankfully you're in a helmet, you're in a uh, roll cage, and then they put a body down over you. If you can see in the picture, like the shell comes over you. So like once they tucked me into there, it was like I felt more comfortable in it. I was like, okay, I'm kind of hidden away from all the flashes and all this stuff. And then it was like you could get back to what you'd been training to do, which was like make sure your fuel is turned on and make like all your things that you do in the car. And then it was just like any other run, which as a new driver isn't like, you're like, okay, this is any other run. I know what to do, but still they're race cars and you never know what they're going to do. So there's always an amount of, you're never getting in it like, okay, this will be easy. Like there's always that little bit of nervousness that like this could be deadly, to be honest. Like people have died, and we've had our teammate was killed only a couple races after that race, actually, in Florida. So there's that part of it that you really have to put out of your mind because that's just not going to be helpful in any way. So usually once they got me in and they started the car, and the people that I see through the window are the people I always see, the same person, my crew chief, Guido, then it's like you're back to your routine, and that's just, you go through your steps and you try to do everything correctly and make your run. And then that weekend, we struggled. So in drag racing, you get 4 qualifying runs, 2 on Friday, usually 2 on Saturday, and then the top 16 cars get to race in the big race on Sunday. So if there's 20 cars there, then there's going to be 4 of them that aren't going to make the show. And so our car struggled the first 3 runs. And on Saturday night, we weren't in the show. Or maybe, yeah, my dad was also not in the show. It became very dramatic. This was great for TV. Like everybody loved it. And my dad loved it because he's done this for, at the time, it was like 30 years. So he gets better with that kind of pressure. Me, I'm like this little 20-something-year-old girl, like, okay, I don't perform better under pressure. But now looking back, it all worked out and it made it for like a really exciting show, because what happened was my dad ran, he made it into the show, but because he made it, he bumped me out of the show. So then it was like this whole extra, like, oh, they were announcing it like, oh my gosh, he bumped his daughter out, but I still got a chance to make a run, thankfully. So then I went up, thank goodness I made a good run. I also got in the show, and then it was just like everything came together and it was fine. So that I definitely remember it, only because it's so dramatic and also because it's documented. It was a whole episode on our series. So I'm like, I really remember it because we have it all on camera, edited. Some of it they edit obviously to make it more dramatic. So, but I mean, that's reality television for you. So, and it's funny because when we were talking earlier before we got cut off about college and classes and picking majors and stuff, because I told you how I took radio, TV, film. So this was before we had the reality show. But I always have had an interest in movie making and all that kind of stuff since I was little. Like there's lots of videos of my sisters and I performing our own plays and filming it. And like we would do tryouts with our friends and then we would record it. And so it's obviously was something I really enjoyed, and I picked that as a degree, and I had no intention to use it. I had no plans to like, I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to try to get into the movie industry. That was not something I knew I wanted to race. So I kind of just picked my degree because my mom's like, you're going to college, you're getting a degree. Like there was no question. And so I just picked something I really enjoyed. And now you fast forward 10 years and I literally, we had the reality show years later, which I remember taking a actual class on reality television. And then a couple years later, we were on a reality TV show, and they actually had me come back to the school and speak and the camera, 1 or 2 of the camera guys came and like filmed it. I spoke to the class, that reality TV show class. So kind of weird things, you just don't know how they're going to come around full circle. But even stranger for me is now on a daily basis, I'm doing editing. I film, I edit, I do all the things that I took classes for and I really didn't think I was going to use. And now I do it every day of the week. So it's like, if it's something you really like, you talk about, you dream of going to Japan. If it's something deep down that you just love, even if in the moment it might not make sense, certain things, it's like it all comes full circle because it's deep down just something that is what you're interested in. And for me, that was always the video world. So it's kind of, I'm always proud of that. Like it seems weird that I did radio, TV, film, but I'm like, it all worked out. Now I wish I would have taken more editing classes and less reality TV classes, but hold on, I think I hear Noah. I think I heard my son. He must be up. If you see like a child's head pop up behind me, it's just my kid. Everything's fine.
See him, ask him some questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that answer. The 5th question I have is, or 4th question, what are your feelings when you're behind the wheel? I think you mentioned that, right?
Briefly. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because the years that I raced, my dad raced my whole entire life, and my dad crashed a lot and he had fires. Like he was known for that in the 1990s, probably before you were born.
I love the 90s, but I was born in 2002.
Okay, yeah. So like those were his, like, he did really great, but he also blew up a lot, and he was on the TV, loved it because it was exciting. Yeah. And so I think I grew up with kind of a false sense of like sense of safety, because he crashed so much, but he always walked away, and it was almost this exciting like entertainment thing. Like we were always, you're nervous, but you're not thinking he crashes, you're not assuming the worst. You're like, oh, he's going to get out with some great interview. And he always did. So I feel like I a little bit didn't have 100% of an accurate, like really understanding of like, these are still very dangerous cars. And, in the years that I raced, when I started in a category called Super Comp, we go like 150 miles an hour. Then I moved up to a category called A Field Dragster. They go 275. And then I eventually moved up to Funny Car. They go 330. I never had a huge fear that maybe like somebody outside of racing would naturally have. Like, you put me in a water where there's sharks, I will literally like shut down in fear, like the most fear I've ever had. And so, but for this, because I was around it so much and nothing bad really, things never happened with my dad, I just didn't have that fear, which maybe was good as far as learning, because I could learn and not have that be a part of it. I could listen and learn and try and not be like scared of it, versus maybe getting in a car and being like terrified and trying to learn how to drive. But then years later, when I moved to Funny Car, in that race that I was just talking about in Pomona. So that was in February. So 2 races later, our teammate was killed in a testing accident. So we'd raced in Gainesville that weekend. And then on Monday, sometimes we stay at certain tracks and do practice runs. And so Eric had made a practice run and he crashed, and we stayed in the hospital with him that week in Gainesville. It was awful. We were in the head trauma unit of a hospital. I mean, just things that for the rest of my life, I'll never forget that time there. And it was awful. I mean, it was shocking, because, and maybe for other people, they're like, well, you're race car drivers, this is dangerous. But for me, I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, my dad's crashed a million times. That, like, I just didn't think what was going to happen happened. Like, we knew he was in an accident. We knew it was serious, but I think I still was just in total denial. Like, oh, he's going to leave here tonight. We're all going to be at Hooters having dinner with the crew guys. And, like, I just really didn't understand this, how serious it was. And so after that happened, I think how I felt about being in the car, it definitely changed, because suddenly you're like, this is not like Disneyland and we're on a ride. Like, this is a real thing that, like, you're going to step on this pedal and you could be dead in 4 seconds if something goes drastically wrong. And so I did struggle with that after that. And then my dad crashed like 6 months later. He didn't have any head trauma, but he, like, his arms and his legs and everything were pretty beat up, and he was in the hospital for a month. So that year, like, I look back and I'm like, wow, I like spent so many years training to move up to Funny Car. And then my first year in Funny Car was just all kinds of craziness that happened. The years following it, I felt like I had more of a normal, like, what I was expecting to have from Funny Car. But that first year, I mean, it was tough, but it really brought our team closer. I mean, I became extremely close to my crew chief and my crew guys, because when you kind of go through things like that, you're just trying to kind of survive and get through it. And I had sponsors, like, I couldn't just quit. And my dad did ask me, I remember this was before his crash. So this would have been like a month after Eric's crash. My dad we went to Coco's restaurant. My dad sat me down. He's like, if you want to quit, we'll quit. You can quit. He's like, I'm not going to make you get in this car if you don't want to get in it. And I, talked to him. I was like, no, I know things can happen, but this is what I've trained to do for years. And it's like, I wouldn't even know where to go. Like, now what am I going to do with my life? This is all I've been like focusing on. So I didn't quit that day. And then years later, now I look back and I'm like, I'm so glad I kept racing. I have those few really awful memories in racing, but I also have a ton of like amazing memories with wins and excitement and all like the good things that happen too. So I mean, it's like you take the good with the bad, but that did change. Like, when I climb in the seat, you're like, okay, it didn't really change how I drive, because I would always try to be safe and careful, and you have a routine, but it became very important to me. And thankfully, the crew chief I had, he was very much like that. He was very orderly, like, to make sure everything is right. And if everything's not perfect, we do not make a run. We never like just, oh, if your arm restraint's a little loose, then we stop. We're not going down the track until we fix it. It's worth losing the run. Like, he was always really strict like that and very protective of me, probably because I was a girl and I was his boss's daughter and he didn't want to hurt me. but it was nice to have it just became like that's just how we do it. Like there is no race win that matters more than double checking everything and being 100%. And there was one race I remember in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. I was in the final round and we were running really good, but the sun went down. There was like a delay because there was rain or something, and it got pretty dark. There was the light at the end of the track, but it was almost like a spotlight into your eyes. And I remember doing my burnout and being like, I just didn't feel comfortable. I'm like, I'm gonna go down this track, and it is like dark down there and like kind of shiny. I remember the track surface like towards the end, like shiny where you can't quite see the groove you want to be in. And I went halfway down the track and I got to the point where I was like, I don't feel comfortable, and I lifted. And my everybody was shocked because I lost the race. But my crew chief was like, you did what you needed to do. I'm not in that car. I'm not gonna tell you, like, you gotta do what's right, because what's the alternative? You're not comfortable or you can't see and you end up over the wall. Like, it's just not worth it. And I know a lot of people were really like, that wasn't very, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the drivers would have been like, especially the guys, the older guys would be like, we're not scared and we just stay on that pedal even when we can't see. Like, that's totally what my dad would say. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's great and all, but I love racing, but I also want to race next weekend, and it just wasn't worth it for me to risk that. And thank goodness the team I had, because there are teams out there that wouldn't have been okay with that. That would have been like, we not our team. Again, I work for my dad, so maybe that's different. But I know there's teams out there that would have been like, we pay you and you lifted for no reason other than it was a little hard to see. Like, there are people that have that kind of pressure. Thank goodness our team didn't put that on me. And I knew I'd go back and I knew I could explain to my crew chief what happened. I knew he'd be like, that's fine, let's go to the next race. And that's what we did. So things like that that are just part of that world. And I don't know if that is has to do with, I know a lot of the guys, they get like the ego thing where I felt like I never was in that battle with him. I was always like, oh, the girl. I mean, I know that sounds bad, like I'm the girl over there over here. I'm not in that ego battle with them, but I'm like, you know what? If it's gonna save my life and allow me to like be comfortable, I'm happy to be the girl in the group.
Yeah.
Sometimes the girls will think about things a little differently and be like, it's not always about winning. And so that's how. And now my boys race. They race in these little junior dragsters. They go
Oh,
about 60 miles an hour, so they're fast little cars for a little for a little eight. My little one just turned 8, so little 8 and 9 year olds. But again, I'm so crazy. Like, I tell my husband, like, if anything is not perfect on the car, we just don't run it. Like, I'm to a fault almost protective, but that's how they trained me to be. And I feel the same way with especially with when it's your own kids. But I feel like you have to have that like line in the sand. Otherwise it can slowly get moved. Like, oh, your belts are a little loose, or your arm restraint is a little, like, no, because you got to imagine, like, worst case scenario, if you're going to crash on this run, where do you want all your gear to be? And now I'm in that fight with my kids with car seats, right? So a lot of their friends, especially my older one, because he's right at the age of like height and weight where we could take him out of like the booster seats and everything.
yeah, yeah.
I'm already getting that pressure for him from him. Like, a lot of his friends, they don't have to anymore. And I'm like, you know what?
Peer
I
pressure.
imagine, yeah, it's like, I get it. You don't want to be in this baby seat anymore. But I'm like, I'm imagining like we're going to flip over on the freeway today. And what do I want you to be in? And it drives him crazy. But he's like, but my friends, they'll like ride with us and I'll bring out the extra booster seats I have for them. And I'm like, Jacob, you just tell your friends your mom used to be a race car driver and she's crashed and exploded and been on fire. And so I know what it's like. And hopefully, obviously, you're not probably going to blow up in your soccer van on the way to school. But I'm like, once you've been in those situations, you think of things differently. So I don't mind being the dorky, overprotective mom until they're 16 and they're still in a 5-point harness. No, I'm just kidding. Eventually, I'm like, when they've reached all the different, it's like height or weight I'm like, okay, when you cross all the barriers, then we'll think about it. But I also have my little one who's going to be like, wait, big brother doesn't have to. No, I don't want to. So there's that battle too. So I'm trying to just hold him out as long as possible.
How old is your youngest again?
He just turned 8 a couple weeks ago.
And your oldest?
And he's going to be 10 in August.
And he's still in a booster seat, you said?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
that's so
Which
cute.
I think now his age, you can be, I think you can actually be 8. I don't know. See, I always play dumb. I'm like, I don't know all the rules. They're like, just Google it, Mom. It says it online. I don't know. I don't remember. I think he's like close on the weight or the height, one of them. So I'm like, we'll just wait. I'm thinking once he turns 10, I'll need to finally take a look at that. But it's not like I do have them I finally got him out of the 5-point harness because my husband's like, this is actually more unsafe that you have him in the 5-point harness. But in a race car, you're in a 5-point harness. So I like that, you know?
Are they tall? Or are they
No, they're not super tall. They're both kind of on the smaller side. So I'm like, they do have friends that are quite a bit taller than where I'm like, I get it. Like they shouldn't, they're fine. But they're not like real big or tall. So I'm like, I'm just running on the side of air. Again, I'm picturing like I'm gonna flip over on our way to school. My husband's like, that's probably not gonna happen. I'm like, what if it did? Yeah.
better safe than sorry?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, the next question is, how did you deal with danger that came with the sport? I think you answered that, didn't you?
Yep.
The sixth one, what was it like to race against and win over your father in 2008?
That was really exciting. All the years I raced with my dad, he beat me quite a bit. I beat him sometimes. It was fun. The rounds that I was against him or my teammate Eric or my teammate Robert, anytime I raced them, I felt like the pressure was off me. I didn't feel the stress that I felt against like another team. It was kind of like I could go up being like, whatever happens, one of our teams go to the next round. So I always enjoyed racing my own teammates because I just didn't have the gut ache that I had the other times. But it was fun to race with dad because the fans loved it. I mean, they just thought it was the coolest thing. How many sports can you have a father and a daughter compete against each other? It's not super common. So that was always exciting for the fans and we always enjoyed it too.
Were the fans rooting for you or your dad?
It was funny because I would notice we have a lot of families come to the races, which I love. So you'd have a lot of like the parents were over behind my dad's pit because the fans can like come right up to the pits and see everything and meet the drivers and everything. So
Yeah.
I'd see like the parents over there and it would be the kids would come over to mine like, well, my mom or dad's over there rooting for your dad, but we're over here. Me and my sister are rooting for you. And I always loved like, that's neat. That's cool. That's why we do what we do, to like see that they can have like that competition between each other up in the stands watching, like taking bets and stuff on me and my dad or whatever. It was fun.
So you won, right? Obviously. How did that feel? Like, were you like, yes?
On that day, if you're talking about probably Atlanta 2008, because that was my very first win. And it was I ended up there's 4 rounds in a race, but the 4th round I ended up against my dad and I beat him. And it was really special because I was the first female to win in a funny car race. Because at the time there really wasn't. There's one other gal, Melanie and I, that raced against each other, and she ended up winning like a race or 2 after me. So I just was lucky that I happened to win right before her. But it was neat that it could be against my dad, and he doesn't like to lose. Like it's hard on him. He's always happy for his drivers, but he's been doing this so long. He just has a very competitive streak in him. So no loss is ever like an easy one for him. But he kind of stepped back and let me and my team have our moment and, do our interviews and everything like that. So it was cool.
That's cute. The next question would be, could you tell me about your victory at the US Nationals in Indianapolis in 2009?
So Indy is our biggest race of the season. And I actually won there before Funny Car in my A-Fuel days. I won Indy against a gal. It was an all-female final. I'm really proud of that because that's super rare. And that was, I don't even know what year that would have been. Maybe like 2004, I think, when I was in A Fuel and I won Indy there. So then a few years later, I had moved up to Funny Car and won in 2009. And then I won again in Indy in 2010. It kind of was just, sometimes you just have your tracks you just do good at for whatever reason. And I feel like once you've done well at a track, you're more likely to do well there again because you kind of have that memory, like, oh, especially Indy. Like a lot of people get super mental about Indy. Like people get like, they just forget how to drive or they're throwing up behind the like they get crazy stressed about it. But I think because I won there in A Fuel, I was like, you know what? Just because it's Indy, we can still win Indy. Even though it's like really hard to win Indy because everybody wants to, and I'm a new driver and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm against people that have been doing this longer than I've been alive. But it's like I could still win Indy because we did it before in A Fuel. And so I think that really helped me, that I didn't have like that negativity around it. Like, well, there's, how would you do this? Like you're new and da 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 da. That just like never crossed my mind. And we just had a really good car and we were running good and we just kind of did our thing and didn't let it get mental to us. My team, I had a really fun team, like a good group of guys that would make jokes and play music, and we kind of kept it light and like just enjoyed what we were doing and didn't let it become too serious. And so winning that day, I mean, my dad was like bawling on the starting line when I won because for him, like it took decades and decades to win Indy. And then I did it in my second, I think my third year. So, but again, it's like sometimes it's just your day and you have luck on your side or your car's just running better than the other cars and it's just your day to win. So,
Would you go back or no?
to driving
Oh no,
or
to
to Indy?
Indy. Would you want to win again or?
Yeah, I mean, they race there every year and I feel like if I were to go back driving, even more than winning Indy, like the next goal I would for sure set would be trying to win a championship. Now that's hard, even harder to do because you got to just do well the whole season. But I feel like for me, that and winning at a home track, that's always one. I won our home at our home track in A Fuel, but I don't think I ever won there in Funny Car. So there's just certain races, and every driver has maybe different ones that are like important ones for them to win. Um, so we used to race, or we do race four wide racing at a couple of races of the year. So there's four race cars racing at once. We do that in Vegas and Charlotte, I think. And it's really special because my younger one, Noah, last fall, they did a four wide for junior cars in Vegas and it was at night. It was really cool, like neatest thing ever. And he won that race. It was the very first race that he won. So now he can tell me like, Mom, I won four wide. You've never won four wide, but I have. So I'm like, that would be one I would like to go back and win. Um, but yeah, you always have your different ones that are just special to you for different reasons.
Oh, I see. That's nice. Number 8. What has it been like to see your sisters following your fathers in your own footsteps?
It's been really fun to get to do this racing thing together as a family. I feel like a lot of families, you grow up in a household and then you kind of all split and go different ways and you maybe see each other on holidays, but that's about it. But for our family, we were working together, we were traveling together, and it kept us really close. And it was really exciting and fun for me to try to help them to learn and to teach them because they did all the categories I did, just like a couple years behind me. So I never got to race against them. We were always in a different category. So Brittany and Courtney raced in the same categories together. So they raced against each other in Super Comp and in A Fuel. And then Courtney moved to Funny Car, the category I did, and Brittany moved to Dragster, and that's what she races right now. But so they actually got to race each other, and I never got to race them, which I miss that. But also, I'm like, it was just at different times in our lives, so at least I got to race against my dad and stuff like that. But it was fun to watch them, and I'm so proud of them. They both did great. We're all so different in our personalities, and I feel like the fans liked that. That it was like there was like a variety, and we're a good mix of my mom. She's very kind of calm, quiet, and then my dad's the total opposite. And so my sisters and I all are in varying degrees of between the two of them. I think of the three, Courtney's the most like my dad. She's super outgoing and outspoken, and like she's not shy. Brittany's a little more quiet. She's not super talkative. And I kind of fell somewhere in the middle. So it's been fun to watch their journeys in it and how different theirs have been from the years that I did it.
That's cool. Number 8. Oh wait, I mean number 9. What lessons from your racing career have you found apply to life in general?
Life lessons. Let's see. Well, I definitely think a main one is to pick a career that you would do even if it didn't pay you to do it. And for me, growing up in racing, like that for sure was it. The amount of travel. I mean, now I see my husband, he travels so much. He does miss a lot of things with the kids, like Friday night football and stuff. He's on the road, but he loves drag racing. He loves tuning. He grew up around it too, out in Chicago. I didn't know him when I was a kid, but he grew up with his dad racing and stuff. So it's like, if you can find, I mean, in a perfect world for everybody, I would hope to find a career that's something you love anyway. And I know sometimes you go through times in your life where you just have to do a job to make money, and that to do what you need to do is fine. But I think ultimately, like, I hope for my kids, like, find something you really enjoy that you look forward to going to work each day. Like Mondays for me, I know today I'm like working from home, but when the kids are in school, usually like I'll head to our shop and work. I never dread Mondays. Like I know I see a lot of posts on Facebook and like Sunday night, and people are like jokes about like people get so depressed to like go back to their work week on Monday. And I'm like, I don't ever feel like that. I'm always excited to go back. I know I'll have new video projects to edit. Oh, I get to pick a song. I'll get to listen through all my like the website where I get my music from and pick a song for this video I'm going to work on this week. Or I like all the people that I work with. I get along with them great. So I'm always excited to see what did they do that this weekend and like catch up. And I feel like that on a week to week basis, like how different life would be if I like dreaded going to work. Like that stinks, you know? So that's one lesson with racing where I'm like, I feel like all the people out there drag racing, they all love drag racing and that's why they do it. And if they're able to make money and have a career, that's just like icing on the cake. But for me, I'm like, even though I don't race now on the road, I'm still in our business, but in a different side of it. But I'm like, it still holds true even over here, like on the business side of it. If you can enjoy what you do, one, you'll be better at it. But two, might as well. I mean, life's short. Why would if you're able to do something you love as your job, that's I think the ultimate goal for everybody. So
I completely agree with that. And number 10, drawing upon your career in motorsports, what advice would you give to young people trying to pursue their future goals?
In motorsports
Yes.
specifically?
Yes.
I think it's important to get whatever field you are thinking you might want to get into, you got to be around it a little bit. Like you can't watch drag racing on TV and be like, "Oh, I want a job in that," and go like apply. You're only seeing like a little snippet of it. Kind of like how they're like, "Oh, people like show their lives on Instagram and it's not really 100% what their life really is. It's like what they want to show." Well, same with in any type of motorsport. What you see on TV, it's just, yes, it's the exciting part of it. It's Sunday race day and they do the national anthem and it's all the excitement and it's super glamorous and fun and like everybody loves that part. But there's a whole other part of it. Like if you're thinking you want to be a crew guy, well, they like drove for 2 days across the country and then they stay in some little random hotel and then they're eating out of a gas station half their meals and they get to the track before the sun comes up and they leave the track sometimes before the like after the sun goes down. So there's like you don't see that in the 2 hour show you're going to watch on Sunday. So I think it's really important. We have in the past, I wouldn't say we get a lot of them because most of the crew members that we get come from like tech schools and they are very familiar with racing. But sometimes we'll get someone who just somehow got hired on and was not expecting what was going to come at them. And they don't even get to a race. They get through a week of testing. And testing is the hardest part because it's all the work with none of the fun cameras and all racing competition. It's just practice runs, and it's a lot of setting, building the motors and getting ready for the season, building all the extra backup stuff. So I feel like of the year, that's probably the most tedious, not so exciting part. And a lot of the guys, new guys, don't make it through that. They go through the week and they quit. They're like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And so I would definitely give that advice for anybody. Like if you think you want to be involved, like let's say specifically drag racing. If you think you want to be involved in drag racing, whether it's as a crew member or a driver or a PR person or a sponsor, like try to any chance you can get to like get involved. Maybe it's a internship or even just going to your local race and seeing if you can, like, I don't know if tracks do this, but like it'd be ideal, I would think, to like get to go into the tower, see what it's like in the press room, like what is it on, what do they do in there, what is that world. I feel like the more info, especially now with social media, a lot of people film all that stuff, so you could actually learn a lot about it probably on YouTube and stuff behind the scenes of any of those jobs. I'm sure if you googled race PR person, there's probably tons of videos that you could even watch. And I feel like that gives you a little bit more of a sense of what it's going to be like. And you can be a little more prepared and know, like, yes, this is what I want to do, or maybe this isn't quite what I want to do. So, like, I thought I wanted to chase tornadoes when I was a teenager because I watched the movie Twister. And I went and like bought the whole outfit that the lady in the movie Helen Hunt wears. And I bought the big watch and I like dressed the part. And my mom's like, first of all, you've never seen a tornado in your life. You live in California. Second, you're really gonna like you have no big interest in weather. It's not like you have some, like sometimes you just get caught up in the excitement of something and how it looks. And like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But it's like, be sure you know what you're getting into, because every job, even the coolest jobs in the world, are going to be a lot of work. So make sure it's work that you enjoy doing.